good to catch up, to see everybody's faces, to hear not only what's going well in your schools, but also probably more importantly what's going well just in your lives in general. So I appreciate that. Let's move on and get started with this party. First 1.0 is our roll call. We want to go through that.
Ruth Wolf.
Present.
Dan Burke.
Present.
Bill Coates.
Here.
Sarah Crawford. Here. Ernie Guerrero. He is here. But I don't know.
Yeah, he just had to step out. He'll be back.
Wendy Dunaway. Here. Tony Exton. Keith Flanagan will be joining us virtually. Robert Trammell.
Here.
Alex Humphrey.
Here.
Nick Elizabeth.
Here.
Alvin Logan.
Here.
And Laura Martinez. Brett McClendon. Here. John Steiner.
Here.
Travis Steiner.
Here.
Dave Trujillo. And Ryan West. And for the CHSAA staff, we got Rhonda Blanford here. Tom Robinson.
Here.
Adam Bright.
Here.
Bethany Brooklyn.
Here.
Rashawn Davis.
Here.
Jen Roberts Wheeler.
Here.
Justin Sager.
Here.
Brett Christian.
Sager.
Here.
Sarah Vernon Bruner.
Here.
All right, great. Are we good to stream, Brad?
We're gonna record it and post it.
Okay, awesome. All right, real quick, I mean, we already kind of went through our welcome just a little bit. You know, I think in talking to people, it's that time of year where, you know, basketball starts to wind down and there's more and more going on as you know, and wrestling and skiing and everything else. And so there's lots of stressors and lots of things coming at you from a lot of different angles. I know I've talked to a lot of ADs who have said, you know, they feel like this year, while things are going really well, it's maybe more complicated in a lot of ways, just in the fact that there's so many things that are coming at them. The pace of things seems to be, I guess, quick. There's just a lot coming at, I think, ADs and school administrators from a lot of different directions. So while things have definitely, I think, in a lot of ways gotten better and improved, it's still a tricky road to navigate. And I think it's important for all of us just to keep in mind, you know, any way that you can reduce stressors. I know for us, we've gotten to a point where last night was our first home game where we made mask recommended. And while I don't, mask or no mask really makes no difference to me, to have one less stressor in my life made a huge difference, just in terms of the way I felt about everything that happened during the course of that game and being able to administer that game. And it just got me thinking, especially on the way over, that if there's things in your life, I think this is one of those times where if you can find ways just to decrease, even if it's one stressor or one thing that you can just separate from, or kind of take a deep breath from, it seems like now is a great time to do that. And maybe, you know, even just thinking about, I was thinking about on the way over, what are those things that are those stressors in my life? What are the things that are causing me the most, and how can I reduce that? Or how can I put those into a box that maybe simplify my life in some way? And so I think for all of us right now, that's probably at least something to keep in the back of your mind as we go through, you know, our business and as we go through just the rest of this year. Things are going to continue to quicken. Their pace is going to continue, I think, to be one that things just continue to come at us from a lot of different angles, and it's just a complicated time. So I think it's just something for us to keep in mind. The more we can simplify and streamline our lives, I think the easier it's going to be, the better it'll be for us, just moving through what we need to do. I continue to hear a lot and have had a lot of discussions, a lot of outreach. I've been on the road a lot. We've had a lot of games, so I've had to interact and had conversations with just ADs from different schools, which has been great. And then also a lot of officials. And so I know our conversations, this discussion just keeps coming up. And I've been at a lot of different schools, school districts across the state, across the Western Slope, but even on the Front Range, it's like the first thing that we end up talking about. So I think it's just recommitted in me the importance of continuing those conversations as we look into our committee work that needs to be done to figure out what Tom's position is gonna look like moving forward, and we're gonna talk more about that a little bit later in the meeting. It's not just us, and I know we know that, but to hear that from officials, how concerning it is to them, from ADs, you know, it's to me maybe the most important thing right now, that we just need to make sure that the top of our priority is as we move forward, and think about. With that, again, welcome, thanks for coming, good to see everybody, and, we'll have a great meeting. I think the agenda, you know, in general is pretty short, and we should have plenty of time to be able to get into our executive session and then go through and talk about exactly what we're looking for, in terms of the commissioner position, the hiring, and exactly what the board is after in terms of what we know and what it looks like, and kind of ironing out the processes that we've already discussed a little bit, and getting to a real solid understanding of where we're going as a board is important. And I know something that we've had a lot of discussions, and I've talked a lot about with you guys in the meeting, so looking forward to that. Any additional items? 2.2, I think we have one for sure, Alex.
I've asked Luke to add Alex for a legal update just regarding the Falcon wrestlers and where we're at. We'll be getting on a call with, a rep attorney today. But several of you were copied on an email by a parent, and I think it's just important that we have just a little bit of information.
So we do have correspondence from an attorney who evidently represents Mr. Betterman, who is the club coach and owner and who boys builder, claiming that they should be allowed to compete. And this is one of those situations where people get really confused about what CHSAA's role is. And it doesn't matter how many times you tell people, no, we don't hire and fire coaches. No, we don't conduct investigations. No, we don't make 504 plans, and we don't do IEPs and all that sort of stuff. We received a report from the school that said that the young men were in violation of the specialized training rule, and therefore were ineligible. It has never been brought to court. Nevertheless, we have an attorney and Mr. Betterman who are claiming that they're going to, they haven't been through any of the process. We're going to try to explain that to them today. It works. And then Rhonda, the wrestlers, so Rhonda pointed out, today was today's first day of regionals, so there's really no time, for them to step in here, so that's what's happening. Advise you of the process. Just one other short report, which is on the swimmer who had the tape on that was holding
Glucose monitor.
his medical device. Yeah, taped on, and very confident of noted, asked him, do you have a letter from your physician that says that that's what you're supposed to be wearing that? And everybody had been advised of that numerous times, that you have to have that letter. And it's not like diagnosis or nothing like that, it's just a letter that says he needs to wear this and it's safe. And he didn't have it, and so his coach pulled him and released somebody else in his place. advice. And what followed was a complaint to the DOJ, Department of Justice of North Iowa. Americans with Disabilities Act. Lon and I spent 2 hours on the phone with two DOJ lawyers, a week or so ago, and hopefully explain that in a way that they could understand. Which remains to be seen.
I was given legal advice to be calm and collected, but somehow during that meeting, Alex lost it.
This is on tape.
And it was very uncomfortable, but they got the hint and we moved forward a little bit faster after that and were more relevant in the questioning. So, I mean, I know sometimes we think Alex is, you know, just kind of this laid back, but when he was done after 2 hours. So it was about, I would say 2 hours and 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think I stepped in at about 1:45.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what's going on, and then beyond that, as you may know, I do work for Case. This is superintendent fire recently. As you probably may experience in your own lives, it's a particularly ugly week. And it's true, but I don't know why people take that job. Anyway, that concludes my report.
Any other additional items need to add to this agenda? Okay, moving on to 3.0, approval of minutes and probation restriction review. These are action items, so we do need to take a vote on these. Item 3.1 is approval of the minutes from our January 20th, 22 meeting. I'll need a motion to approve those minutes. I'll need a second. I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motions are approved, or the minutes are approved. Item 3.2, the probation removal approval. Item 3.2, you can take a look at that, it's in your packet. We will need a motion to approve the probation removal. Need a second? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. That is approved. Item 4.0, Commissioner update. Rhonda.
If you don't mind, we have Ms. Bichon here, Jean, our CLA auditor representative, and you guys have a package. And I'm gonna say this first of all, thank you for your patience, as we pulled this together, and it happened way before the transition, so just getting all of these items ready to go for you today, it was not even an option that we wouldn't have a final report today, and I wanna thank Jean, she really pushed some things through. I mean, we were doing a second review by her, audit team yesterday at 3 o'clock to make sure that you had your final packet, and so, she's here. We, after our last meeting, I forwarded you the PDF of where we were at. She's gonna give you a report today on some of those additions and maybe some edits since you received the PDF, and then she's also gonna see if you have any questions, and if not, we're just gonna take a vote on the audit, so.
All right, thanks Rhonda, and good morning, everyone. I don't know if you guys remember me from last fall, but I'm Jean Bouchon, and I'm the engagement principal on this year's external audit. I'm not gonna bore you with a lot of the details that I went over last fall, so I'm just gonna give you a quick highlights and reminders of some of the things that I walked you through, highlight a couple of things that changed in these reports, and see if you guys have any questions, all right? So in your packet, you have 3 documents. The first document, the larger document, are your finalized financial statements. So our job as your external auditors is to tell the reader of these financial statements if they can rely on these numbers. Is the cash that you're saying was your cash as of June 30 truly your cash, right? And we have to take the records of what the CHSAA provides us and determine yes, and that's exactly what we did. If you want to, for those who want to follow along, please don't feel like you have to, but if you want to follow along, if you want to flip to page 1 of that report, the audit results are summarized in this report. This is our report. Essentially, we remind everybody that these financial statements are the financial statements of CHSAA. While we assist in preparation of these, they're 100% management, where our job is to audit them and say, reader, can you rely on that? Now, on the very next page, we tell the reader exactly that. We believe that these financial statements, these numbers, are free from material misstatement. I think another thing that I'll highlight on page 4 of the document, last fall I went over this document in a lot more detail, but not a lot changed here, so I'll just remind everybody of some of the differences we went over last fall. Essentially, the settlement, the large settlement that was due post 6/30 year end, that liability is being reflected here for $1.9 million. You'll see that about halfway down the page, and I'm on page 4 if I didn't say that, sorry. Up top though, you did have the insurance receivable for $1 million, so the net impact to the organization was a $900,000 loss. Also on page 4, something that was unique both last year and this year is your PPP loan payable. Your loan payable, I know you guys know this, but just as a reminder, your loan payable from last year was forgiven. This year's loan is still reflected on here, although it's been forgiven post year end. But because as of 6/30 and had not yet been forgiven, that liability is here. Next year, when I come see you guys, you're going to see income for that forgiveness, because that debt is going off your book, almost like a grant, right? On the very, just at the bottom of the page, is a reflection of what we call your net assets in the not-for-profit world. That's your equity, right? Assets owned minus liabilities owed is your equity. It did go down about $943,000 during the year. And the next page shows why it did go down, revenues minus expenses. Obviously, the settlement had a big piece of that, right? And so, in addition to COVID continued to impact us in FY21. So this is just that statement showing your decline in net assets, again, primarily due to that settlement. No big changes in those two statements from when I visited with you in the fall. I am going to highlight the one change that was made to this packet that was not in here in the fall. That is seen on page 17. We just added a quick little blurb talking a little bit more about that settlement table, how it was paid after year end, and in addition, how your insurance receivable was received after year end. So it just summarizes that instance in that note. But that was the only change from when we presented this in the fall. So this is the final published document. I'm going to walk you through two last documents, and I'll open it up for any questions. So the second document, if you want, I think it may be second, if not, it says significant accounting policies. Again, you don't have to flip to it if you don't want to. I can quickly highlight this letter. But what this letter is auditor's requirements of communication to you. Audit standards require we communicate elements of the audit. Essentially telling you, were there any difficulties? We report to you. While we work with Ryan and while we work with Sarah, we report to you. So we have to tell you, were there any audit difficulties? Were there any disagreements, things that came up in the audit that may have impacted the integrity of what we were asked to do? And essentially this is says no. There was nothing that we feel like we need to bring to your attention. The only change we made from when we presented this to you in the fall, what is seen on page 2. On page 2, we highlight financial disclosures we think you need to pay attention to. For example, I think we all are aware of COVID, right? We discussed the impact of COVID to the organization in note 1. In note 4, we talk about the PPP program. We just simply added a reference to that note 10, again discussing the settlement payment. And then the very last document, this is what we refer to as our management letter. You may recall in the fall, I talked a little bit about internal control deficiencies we want to continue to focus on and to remediate. One good thing, some good news, upon Sarah's return, she was able to provide documentation for 2 deficiencies we previously had some voided checks that we couldn't get support for. You always want to be able to account for all checks written. When we did the audit originally, copies of voided checks couldn't be located. Sarah comes back and she's able to put her hands on them, so we were able to remove that comment. Similar for wire transfers. Wire transfers right now, are able to go out, but we need somebody to review those and approve those to make sure that they're valid. And, that process, we originally found an instance where they couldn't find that approval. Sarah was able to come in and locate that. So we were able to remove those two deficiencies. And so, no other changes to this particular letter from when we had it last fall. So in conclusion, the audit's been wrapped up. I know, I do have to say, you know, with this being the last audit that I worked with Rhonda, you know, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, even though it's been 2 short years. I feel like it's been 10, and so, hopefully our paths will continue to cross. And I have to say, I know it's been reiterated, we're all super, super excited to have, Sarah back. I hope everyone, makes sure she understands how much she's appreciated in the work that she does to make sure your financial records are maintained appropriately. So super glad she's back. So, I'd like to open it up, see if anybody had any questions. Rhonda, I think we're done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You rocked it.
Yeah, all right.
We're going up
Fantastic,
to 2 and a half
everybody.
weeks now, so you rocked it.
Yeah. Everyone have a wonderful, wonderful morning.
What is this you done? She said that, Jean, are you good with them keeping these?
Yes, these are
Okay.
these are published, they're done. All right.
And we'll just need to entertain a motion to approve the audit as in the final reading.
I'll move.
Motion. Wendy, and then Caleb second.
Any further discussion on this?
I'd like to say, welcome back, Sarah.
We do this like a standing ovation.
That was my celebration. And I just wanted to give thank you, Jean. You guys, you don't see what's going on behind the scenes,
Yeah.
but she was calling Washington yesterday, doing a lot of stuff to try to get this for you, so thank you for your support of the association.
Of course. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. So real quick, any other conversation? All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Alright, so we're good. Anything else, Rhonda, updates?
I'll do just a quick, on the bylaws, we are going to have to bring about 3 or 4 bylaws to you prior to your April meeting, kind of a deadline for the legislative council packet. One definitely, and you guys, I'm just bringing this up because, I trust our board, and when you guys went in executive session and came out on the appeal, nothing but support around that decision, but there was a red flag for me because it was considered a bona fide family move, and the bylaw 1800.3 says, under no circumstances can an athletically motivated transfer be considered a bona fide move. And so, what I bring into this board and what I'll probably bring in a bylaw revision is that we all have to have the ability to look at all of the circumstances, right? So, had I done that, I would not have been following the bylaw because it says that. And the appeals committee could not, under any circumstance, look at that as a bona fide family move. So I will bring to you just a revision, allowing the next commissioner or myself throughout the rest of the year to have that flexibility to take that new documentation, because that's what I think we'll all be on the same page. Probably wouldn't have come to you had we had some of that flexibility. So we'll just correct that bylaw, so appeals committee, next commissioner, board will have that. And if you guys are okay with that, I'll bring that to you. We're getting rid of under no circumstances. We'll just say, give us all the opportunity to do that. So, the other one is, the mill. So we already have a young lady in Colorado that's probably looking at signing with an agent. Her mother is asking a lot of great questions around what does that mean? Can I sign with an agent? Can she do a commercial if she doesn't wear the uniform? And she's just really allowing us to add some additions to that bylaw, as well as create some Q&As. So we're gonna bring that to you with the Q&As and maybe add a couple other things into that meal based on now we're all learning, right? Other states are learning, and so we will be bringing you a new revision to the meal to update before the legislative council. We'll be bringing you under no circumstances, and then the other one, I think it might be a CHSAA one. Currently, CHSAA has representatives from each one of their sports on our sports committee. And they would like to have just a little bit more, and I agree with this, and I think Jen does, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Adam since I talked to Joe, but just allowing that CHSAA rep to have a voice in the voting process, so they're already sitting there. So why wouldn't we create a bylaw that says whoever CHSAA, almost like a CASB rep, an at-large position, so whoever CHSAA looks at as their rep on that committee, they would have the voting privileges and the opportunity to talk to other coaches throughout CHSAA, and then be a part of the committee instead of kind of an aside rep that just gives a report. So we'll probably bring that to you as well. But other than that, we have one we're gonna tweak a little bit, but we'll wait till after these next couple of weeks. And just conversations within the office around the earlier conversation we had, just to make sure that that's better clarified. So other than that, so I'm thinking I'm gonna do a virtual, and I'll look at a date and say, hey, this maybe will take 15 minutes. If y'all can log on, approve these bylaws, changes, we'll go through them, and then we can add them to the final legislative council packet and then review them at the CHSAA outreach.
So Rhonda, the one question I have is about the last one you talked about, the CHSAA representative on the committee. I guess my question is, do we need a bylaw to state that CHSAA member would be a voting member? Because we don't have anything in the committee that talks about committee makeup of who the voting member is right now for bylaws. So that's all controlled right now by the commissioners, right? How many we have?
Yes, and there is one that, and you guys can correct me if I say that, but there's one that says that the committees can, coaches can only do 10% or whatever, I'm paraphrasing off the top of my head. So that's where we would add that 25%, right under there would say a CHSAA rep will be representative on a committee and will have the opportunity to be a voting member. So we would just add that into that bylaw. I think it protects the ability, if we're not here, that says that a CHSAA can appoint, just, they're there anyway. And we're gonna talk about that today as a staff, but when you talk about just people feeling like they matter and that they have a voice, they're there anyway, so why, in my mind, why not give them the credibility to say, that CHSAA rep, Joe, Becky, or whatever, says, okay, this is the soccer guy, he goes out, talks to the soccer people, and then he brings that report to the CHSAA committee, and then has the ability to vote on the things that happen within the committee.
So would it be worthwhile if we're gonna spell that out in the bylaw, that makeup of it, do we need to do that for all members of that committee, saying that, hey, these are the members, or this major classification, or they should be limited to this?
I think we could definitely spell something. I don't think we need to do numbers, but I think the process is in place that talks about that we will look at regional representation, we will look at classification representation, we will look at gender, ethnicity. I think we could spell that out better in that bylaw.
The only reason I bring that up is I noticed that the big sites, they vary quite a bit. You've got some that have as many as 16, you've got others that have, for a similar size sport that have 8. So.
And I do believe it's, and I hear you, Bernie, because my clock committee, because of representation from rural schools and all of the things that we talked about, went from like 9 to 14, right, in 1 year. But I would have to say, some committees don't get pushback for not having voices at the table. Does that make sense? So if you're talking about lacrosse or cross country, or, and I'm not saying that in a mean way, but football, if you don't appear to have more voices on that committee and representation on that committee, then you do get the pushback. So I think the numbers are equate to, just where it is for representation. I hate to say that this committee has 20, and then now we have 20 on the cross country. I think nobody has really questioned the representation on there and the numbers on there, but there are some variations in diversity with the numbers. But again, if we didn't learn anything last fall, we better have 30 on football, and volleyball might get away with
Gymnastics
most.
was like
But I like that, what you said about just really putting in kind of, this is how we do put in committees, and this is what we do consider as administrators, so. We'll work on that today.
Where are we with any transfer proposals? You'd mentioned that the one got pulled, right?
Yeah, so the one that, the two leagues, the Northern and the Little Plums Peak League, were considering what pre-trial transfer basically, and after speaking with people throughout the state, we knew, even within our own leagues, we realized that there's not, it wasn't a good pilot proposal, and then it wasn't feasible. So, like, with people through the process of voting on it, we just, and I don't think right now, I don't believe that there are any transfer bylaw proposals that are out there. Because we didn't, as a group, right now, we turned down every single one of them that came our way, and committee. So.
We did, they turned down my freshman one, I proposed the freshman one, because when you look at the number of waivers that we review, the majority of transfers happen after the first year. And so I thought, you know what, make it easy, just don't put any restrictions on that kid that leaves after the first year. And that became like an hour-long conversation about, well, they chose to go to school A, and now we're gonna let them come back to B, displace a kid at B that stayed at that school, and the handbook committee moving forward to drink the freshman one. So I think everybody, and I always say, look at the pushback we would be getting on the number of transfers that we review every year, and you've only had 2 appeals to the board, and you haven't had any legal, so your transfer bylaws are pretty solid right now. It's just making sure that people understand them at the local level, and I would have to say the majority of our ADs uphold those bylaws, and their parents don't push after that point. So I have to give kudos to our athletic directors that say, no, this isn't the 16 people in Aurora's bylaws, these are our bylaws, and this is about competitive equity and fairness. So I do want to say kudos, because they're being shut down at the local level after I've provided a rule. All right, so those are the ones that we'll bring. I'll send you an email with just a date, probably on a Wednesday, right, Don? Yes, Wednesday in the afternoon. It will probably be less than 30 minutes. We'll just need your thumbs up before I move these forward in the legislative council packet. All right, last thing, officials. Luke made a reference to that. We are going to send you by email, Tom, just the job description and some points of emphasis on the official's position. We need to get that posted. I know we talked about a subcommittee, so we will convene a subcommittee around conversations with the official's position. We'll get the salary range out, we'll get all of those things, but once we send you that email, if you can respond back to us with areas that you think that job description is missing based upon our earlier conversation, and we'll incorporate that into the job description, get it put in its format, and then Sarah will post that for us. So we should have the officials' job description and opening out next week, early next week. And then, as I said earlier, that is the new commissioner's employee. If we only have 7 or 8 applications, we won't even screen them, we'll just give that to the new commissioner. If we get 50, and I know I said that before, but I'm not gonna say it again, if that guy or girl who officiated middle school and then thinks that they're gonna kind of be the director of officials, we want to try to screen those out before the new commissioner comes in and has to weed through 50 applications that aren't relevant and don't meet the job description. So, we will get that taken care of. and that should be out soon. We do have interest within the membership for this position. So that's pretty exciting for people who know kind of what is needed right now. Last but not least is the clock. We will be getting the clock packet out. You guys know this is the new bylaw that will be implemented this year. This is about appeals of, decisions that didn't come to clock last year for the classification cycle. So the administrators have been communicating with our membership. They will be bringing the appeals forward to the clock committee. I think maybe we have 6 or 7. We have one school, Norfolk, brand new school. There's some confusion around what numbers were being used when they were communicated with from our office. And so, to be fair, we have said you may come before the clock committee and appeal your classification placement because it was done with 2 separate types of numbers. And we feel like the clock committee should make that decision and make it final, and that they follow the process that every other appeal school had used in the last classification cycle. So other than that, we're ready to go with clock. We have a brand new chair, but Randy Holman's gonna be a part of that communication. He's actually gonna do the historical update as well as kind of talk about the responsibilities. And we've already created, Clay, Randy, and I, a disclaimer, because we always get that, oh, this is subjective, why did they give it over here for travel, but they didn't do it here, and we just really need to have something in writing that says every school, every situation is done individually, using all the criteria, one of the criteria, but that's what the legislative council voted on, that the clock committee could have that kind of flexibility to look at every school. So I think it's important that we have that statement, and we've created that, which will be part of the clock report. So other than that, that is the commissioner's report.
Who's the new chair?
The new chair is Clay Adla. Adla, he's the district athletic director for Littleton Public Schools. And he is, what I told him yesterday, I said, you're overthinking this, bud. I mean, he wanted every detail. How does it vote? And what does this look like? And he said, again, I'm making a joke about football, but he said, the clock committee is one of the most important committees that, no, football is. But, but he is excited and just his thought process, and I think that he'll be able to run that meeting when we go into the classification cycle next year. So, looking forward to working with him this year, and Randy's gonna help us transition him so that he's ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. Moving on, item 5.0, financial update. 5.1 is PPD forgiveness loan approval. Rhonda?
Yes, and I printed you a copy of, I knew that we were forgiven for our loan, but I wanted you to see from our banker, KeyBank, and he sent me this email yesterday, so you have confirmation that $363,000 has been forgiven, and we are at 0. So I in the last couple of meetings, I've been very transparent about my frustrations around our previous director of finance, but he really did position us to start to get the loan forgiven. So I want that to be noted, that Charlie did get us start us off on this track. I was out there by myself for a little bit, and then the closer came in, and so it really was a team effort to get 363. You guys, this was the priority. You start having to pay on that type of loan, it was going to be, it was gonna hit us financially. So just wanted to share that, and my favorite part is where it says all zeros, so we don't owe a dime. So thank you, Sarah, thank you, Charlie, thank you for everyone that helped with that, especially to acquire the old officer at the bank, at Jackson, the forefront of everything on this.
What was the total on our people? Because there were 2 loans that were forgiven.
Last year, we had a PPP forgiven, and then, now, yeah.
This is our number 2.
200,000?
Almost, yeah.
So, it's big, so.
Alright, next item, 5.2, financial update. Sarah?
So, started back last week, so a lot of catching up to do, one priority responding back to schools, with lots of questions, getting K to reconcile, and then really following up on fall championships, making sure, that's all complete. And so, that's a big priority right now, closing out the fall and a lot of follow-up with the TP&F reporting, because a lot of reports haven't come in yet, making sure we've gotten those payments. That will be done shortly. And then aside from that, just making sure everything's in our financial statements so that we can provide you guys with complete financial statements. So we're not giving you a budget report today because that has not been done yet, and we would rather present you with complete financials versus, some information that's out of date, not all inaccurate. So we'll present that to you at the next meeting, and it will have fall as well as winter in there. And hopefully it'll be completed, by March as well. And then the next priority Ron and I are working on is the budget for 2022 to 2023. So that, the process there is that it will be presented at the next budget meeting, before the legislative council. So we'll present that to you as well at the next board meeting for review, and it'll be approved, or go through the legislative council, and then come back to you, for approval in June, once this year's kind of closed out. So yeah, lots to catch up on, but I look forward to presenting you with, complete financials at the next meeting.
Great. 5.3 is the final reading and approval of the audit. That's completed, so it is there. Next is 6.0, which is staff updates.
I wanted to open that up, if you had anything for winter sports, if you had any updates for any meetings that have come up.
I'll just start, basketball's coming up, as you guys all know. I put ticket information in front of you, so if you wanted to get some extra tickets, feel free to fill out this form, and then you can turn it into Lakin, or you can just email Lakin what you want. She'll be reaching out. So we're happy to see you guys there, and that way if you reach out, we can make sure that you're on the parking pass, if there's, a venue that needs a parking pass, etc., get you into our hospitality. So feel free to reach out if you guys plan on attending. Thanks.
Yeah, I mentioned swimming, just a quick schedule. We're at VMAC 3A, is Thursday, tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. I'm sorry, 4A is Thursday and Friday, tomorrow. 3A is Friday and Saturday at VMAC. And then 5A is Tuesday and Wednesday next week at VMAC. So if you guys are looking to come in swimming, that's the schedule for the week. Also want to mention ice hockey state tournament, also coming up. We begin with our quarterfinals. We're excited again, back to normal with ice hockey as well, which is kind of exciting. So the ice hockey committee a couple of years ago put forward an expanded playoff bracket. COVID hit, we weren't able to recognize that. So this year we are back to normal with ice hockey as well. So we'll have a 12-team 5A bracket, a 10-team 4A bracket. And we're excited to be at DU for the quarterfinals for 5A. We'll be at DU for the semifinals for 4A and 5A, and then Bowl Arena for the championship game. And that is going to be on a little bit of a different date. We had to move it to Tuesday, March 8th. We were originally scheduled for the 7th. The Nuggets rescheduled the basketball game for the 7th, so we're on the 8th. Unfortunately, the NBA takes break, but we're very happy to be there. I pushed and I tried to make a call to the commissioner of the NBA, but they don't have it. So we'll be on the 7th or the 8th, and very much looking forward to it. And Steamboat has got a top-ranked 4A team, so maybe looking forward to having them down this year.
Rhonda and I just spent the weekend at Nationals for dance, and we had 21 teams representing Colorado, which is huge, and a lot of hardware came home, so that was exciting. And then we have 4 corporate partners that are kind of in the bucket, and we're in some final stages on 3 of them, and just had kind of a new one that we reached out to and are probably in our second conversation. So looking hopeful for August with some new partners. So that's it for me.
Man, it's been busy already, and it just looks like it gets busier with activities, but, esports starts, preseason started last week, regular season starts on the 18th. Our numbers are continuing to grow, so just looking forward to this season. With music, we had all-state choir, we've got all-state orchestra, and we start to move into festival season, and so things are just really going well. Again, if you know a school that wants to host, we still have room, plenty of opportunity there. Speech and debate, the festival was last weekend at Northridge, and that was just great. We were down a couple of schools, and they would attribute that to COVID, of course, but the turnout was still amazing. To be in person for speech and debate was awesome. It's just great reports for festival. The 18th and 19th of March will be a tournament for speech and debate. Looking forward to that. It's at Cherokee Trail. And you know, as mask restrictions are lifted, of course, the speech and debate community is watching that, and facial expressions matter on the, so yeah, you know, so there's just a lot of talk around what that will look like. So that's going well, and of course, student leadership. We've got our advisory university for March. Looking forward to start advertising on that. A lot of follow-up, great follow-up from our activities directors summit, and their desire to be part of what happens with training for any of our coaches or advisors. So just great things happening in activities, and looking forward to festival season for music coming up. The Hotel Elegante is out of business for us, so whatever you want to do with that.
Wrestling regionals will start on Friday this week, so on Sunday we will seed everybody for the state tournaments. So there'll be an email going out here in a little while, just for the girls teams, letting them know exactly how that seeding process works, because it's different than what the boys can do with having 3 regions. I can't easily place 4 regional winners on the bracket because I only got 3, so the old system we've used is kind of not going to work for those guys, so we're going to send out that information to everybody how we'll do that. And we actually lucked out, we'll get to use Track Wrestling. They have a whole seeding system that'll use our parameters, but do it online for us, so we'll be able to go there. But that'll get communicated out this afternoon. Full steam ahead for Ballerina. Looking forward to a great event on Saturday night. When I looked yesterday morning, ticket sales wise for Saturday night, there were only 38 seats available on the lower level. And the second level was already about halfway full, and that's without anybody actually qualifying yet. So looking forward to Saturday night being a full house in there, so that should look good. Finals are going to look a little bit different. We're really trying to create a new atmosphere in there, and keep the energy up high. So if you've been there before, we would wrestle 2 weights and then do awards, and then wrestle 2 weights and do awards. We're going to do all the awards at the end. We're going to try to keep the energy up high the whole way through. So we're going to wrestle all the weights and then do our awards, so the energy stays high. We have an announcer to ads come do our finals instead of some of our local guys have done, just to create the energy higher again. And we're going to try to do some stuff with spotlights and different things, and introduce people out of their corners and get more kind of a UFC or boxing feel to it, instead of the parade of champions taking an hour and shaking hands and those things. We're going to try to get the energy high and keep it there for the 2 hours of wrestling. So excited about what it's going to look like. I think everything for the most part is falling into place, so I think we're looking good there, and should be a good time. So I know we've seen a few ticket requests from a few folks, so excited to have you there. If you're there, be sure to come out of the floor so we can say hi, and we'll if you're there on Saturday night for awards time, just come down, we'll get you plugged in so we can have you recognizing our student athletes.
I just want to reiterate that the job description that we're going to send out, there's going to be 2 documents that come to you. The job description, just know that that's a starting place, and it just gives all the information that I think is kind of relative to what I do. The second document will just talk about what I do during the year. You probably have no idea. It'll just give you some ideas of my responsibilities and duties. So that's just what I'm sending out to you. But just know that your input is very, very important to that process. And so don't feel like whatever ideas you have are not good ones, all right? So just send that back to us, and then we'll incorporate that into the document. We'll share that with you probably before it gets posted, and then we'll probably have a pretty good document. The second thing is I was talking earlier to Luke about just the things that are going on around fan behavior, and I tend to emphasize that after every meeting to be diligent about your game management responsibilities, and just know that I understand that probably most of you are always thinking about it and doing the right thing, but just stay diligent with it, all right? Because it's going to be one thing that happens to you, that you have to deal with it. So just be proactive with that. All right. That's it.
I'll say I was remiss and I wanted to thank Brad. We got over 200 plus on the roundtable Zoom. Again, staff efforts, someone was reading the chat, someone was actually conducting the meeting, but it starts with the technology. And if your meeting starts off with people not being able to log on, the setup's not there, the slides aren't there, it just gives a bad impression of organization. And so I didn't have the opportunity to thank Brad and Dan for making sure that the roundtable went as smoothly as it did. And some of you reached out to me that logged on, but we also received a lot of feedback from the membership. So thank you, Dan, or Brad, and your right hand Dan, because it was very, very smooth.
Yeah, I just heard lots of really positive comments about the roundtable, the content of what was put out, and just lots of thanks to the assistant commissioners for the work. Also, give a quick shout out to CHSAA for their presentation yesterday. I think there was probably at least 100 ADs that were on that, and just again, good conversation, good dialogue about what's upcoming, and hopefully it will make that legislative council meeting go by very quickly.
121.
121, that's great.
I wanted to also mention, I'm actually a meeting too late on this, but for Rashawn, I wanted to say kudos for that activities directors summit that you put on. That was, just from what I could see outside looking in, looked incredible. I think just for elevating the activities world and kind of helping those people feel value. I think that event was a huge step in a great direction. So kudos to you, and thanks for coming on board and immediately moving the needle.
All right, is that it? Staff updates, anything else? All right, item 7.0 is our board of directors executive session, discuss personnel specifically related to commission position, and moving forward with the hiring process. So we will